Hello, my name is Carl Surrey and this is a video tutorial for the Facebook group called Fans of Serif Software. Now, in this tutorial I want to look at making a fake shallow depth of field image, and by that I mean blurring the background. Now, when you take a picture, if you have an f-stop number on your camera lens of say like f11 or higher than that, the depth of field will be quite broad, so you would get things in the foreground and the background. But if you had it on f1 or the smaller f numbers, the image you are focusing on will be crisp, but the background will be blurred. And it's all very good if you can get that in camera, but sometimes if you're just taking a quick shot or you forget to change the f numbers to on your lens, you will end up with a crisp shot from front to back, much like my original one here, which I took. It was a selfie. I set it up on a tripod and I got the Walton Pier in focus just as much as I am here. So what I want to do is to make a fake blurred background, which is what I have here. Now, this tutorial I'm going to spread over two parts. The first one looking at this image. Now, why I'm splitting them up is because in this image I pretty much want the whole background blurred, mainly because you can't really see any of the foreground area from where I am. And by that, I mean if this was like the other shot I'm going to show you, which is this one here, where you have the pavement that these girls are walking on, you want that as much in focus as you do the girls who are at the same distance from the camera as the footpath is, but you want to blur some of the background. So if I turn that off, that was the original picture, which by the way I got from off the internet, a royalty-free website called pixabay.com, and this way is slightly different way of blurring the background but keeping some of the foreground area just as much in focus as the background. But I'll go back to this one and explain how I did this. So what I'll do is I will delete that, delete that. So this is the original image. Now the first thing to do is to select the bit that you want to keep in focus. Now to do this I'm going to use the Smart Selection brush. If you have got the time, you could probably use the lasso tool and the freehand selection tool and draw all the way around the image, but I'm not going to bother too much because the blurring of the background will sort of hide some of any minor misdemeanors where I've missed out something. I'm going to set the grow tolerance to 50 and the border very low down to 2. So you can start off with a fairly biggish brush size, obviously depending on your image, but I'm going to move this up to about 200 or so, and then just select major areas. Just keep clicking around until all the major areas are selected. You can then lower the brush size either from up here or by using the left and right square mouse square brackets on the keyboard, and then select some more near the edges. That pretty much looks to me like I've got everything selected. But what I will do is I will just zoom in quickly. Let's have a quick look around the edges, make sure I haven't missed anything major. I'm not going to worry about the fine hairs. It doesn't matter if they get lost in the blur a little bit. I missed a little bit of this cap up here, so I'll just reduce the size down quite a bit. I just missed a little bit off the nose. And maybe just a little bit off the shirt. I've been quite lucky here because I've pretty much done not a bad selection quite quickly. But if by accident you do come over a bit, let me just select this area here, for example, and assume that this had come over by accident. You can come up here to the subtract selection and click on that icon and subtract that area from the selection. So if I had come over a little bit, I could have just come onto the subtract an area and then subtracted it. Similarly, like I did where I'd missed a bit off the nose there. If it was on subtract, I would have to have come to add, and then it would have added it to that selection. So I will zoom out again now. So as you can see, I've got the marching ants going round this image of myself, and then all I need to do now is to modify that selection. If you come up to the select menu and come to modify, and then feather, I just want to feather it very, very slightly. It's set on 1, and 1 might be enough, but I will just go up to 2, and that should just help select maybe a few pixels just outside of the edge and help blend it a bit into the blur that we're going to add. So now what I need to do is make this selection onto a new layer. Now you can do this by just pressing Ctrl and J, and as you can see, if I turn this background off, that is now on a new layer all by itself. So I will come back down to this background layer and I will duplicate that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to blur this layer. You don't necessarily have to make this duplication. I'm doing it mainly so I can turn them off to show you where I started and to where I'm going to end up. So what I need to do first is to remove the selection area with the marching ants. So what I need to do is to come up again to the top layer to highlight it, and then press Ctrl and D to remove that selection area. Come back down to the background copy, or if you haven't made a copy, the background area, and we are going to add the blur to that area, and that is from the effects menu and blur, Gaussian blur. Now how much you blur your image is up to your personal taste. I mean, this is set at 8. If I go up to 19, for example, or 19.5, it's really quite severe and you're losing it quite a lot. I'll come down to 10. See, that's not too bad. So I'll leave it on 10 and click OK. Now, what you could do here is you could leave it at that, or you could try and make this selected area stand out a bit more. So if I come back up to the top layer by clicking on it and selecting it, and come into the deform tool, this area will now have the deform tool squares around it. And if I hold down the shift key and drag out one of the corners, making the whole image bigger. Now obviously if I click on the move tool now, I move this out of the way, obviously the original image is still behind there, so you're going to have to you might have to maneuver this or make it so much bigger. If I come back to the deform tool and make this bigger still, and then go back to the move tool and just sort of try and hide the area below. I might need to just bring it up in size a little bit more. And just move that over slightly. There you go. So if I leave it at that, I can crop it to lose what I'm losing down here. In fact, I could also go back to the deform tool and drag out the bottom. That's a bit better. Right. Yeah, that's better. So as you can see, I'm now more the focus of the picture, and the background is much blurred and you can't see the picture below. So if I hold down the Alt key and click on, that's the image I started with. Focus from front to back, be a bit smaller, and that's how I ended up with me as the main focus of the picture and the blurred background. So then all you need to do now then would be to merge your layers, merge all, and then once it's merged all down into one background layer, you can then save or export it under a new name. So that is the end of part 1, and hopefully in part 2, if you'd like to view that, we'll be looking at how to make this image where the foreground is also in focus as much as the people in it. Right, that is that tutorial finished. Thank you for watching and listening. Goodbye.